from Los Angeles. Welcome back to Good Morning LaLa Land. We're talking all things transformation, and we have Dr. Laura Kay with us, who is a specialist in transforming lives.
Well, hello. Thank you for introducing me. I am not a doctor, but I'll take it. That's okay. You know, I didn't put my years in for my doctorate, but thanks.
Honorary degree.
Sorry, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, which is a mouthful.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I don't know. I cleared out this morning here. Most of my work is spent in rehabilitation centers for addiction. And so I spent most of my time there, and I have a private practice. And also starting to get the message out into the world about mental health, personal transformation, because many people, there's still a lot of shame and stigma, especially in the area of addiction.
For sure.
So people don't, you know, it takes a while for them to come and get help, and sometimes they're forced, as we all know. That's why the show Intervention.
So I'm curious to know, because, you know, marriage and family therapy, it's a challenging topic because, like, I would never work with couples because I really truly believe that it comes down to the individual. They've got to do their own work and kind of focus on that, because you've got two different things in a two different consciousness in a room. It's really challenging. How do you deal with that? How does that work?
Well, I have a referee shirt and a whistle, so that's my first step. No, I often hear that from other therapists. I don't like working with couples, and I love it. So I really like to get the energy of the room and see, and I focus on the communication. So oftentimes there's something that the people may love each other. There might be an underlying love for one another, but they don't know how to communicate that, you know. And then I said, well, how did you receive love as a child? How did you receive love as a child? And, you know, where can that, come in present time?
Wow, it's so powerful. It's such a good point, and it's something that I've discovered both in my personal life and professional life. Like, there's a difference between when I say, when I say I love you, I mean, when you say you love me, what does that mean? And there's such a disconnect around there that isn't there. So is that part of it? Is it part of it sort of teasing out what people mean when they say I love you?
It is, but it's also in the things we do. I mean, there's that famous book, 5 Languages of Love, and how people receive love, how they communicate it. But it's also, I think, in words. I mean, it's, some people take things as blaming, like you stick with the I conversation. You're like, well, when you do this, I feel. So you own it. Like you're saying, you take responsibility for your individual experience and you don't put it on the other person. And it's also, bring up a good point. I run groups on codependency, and that word is bandied about a lot, right? Codependency. Everybody's codependent for a while. I mean, we're all codependent.
A terrible codependent for a majority of my
life.
Terrible.
But how would you define codependency?
Well, my definition, very simple terms, is my mood and sense of well-being is dependent on your mood and your thoughts and your emotions and opinions, right? So if, for instance, if I was a terrible codependent, and I've just met Dr. Erin, if she got up and was like, did an eye roll and went to get that, and she was really just forgot something on the table, and I go, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? And then all of a sudden I'm going, oh, am I a bad person? So I'm questioning myself. So you're right. I have to be secure in myself before getting into a relationship. Otherwise,
I say hats off to you to do counseling for couples. I won't do it. I don't believe in it, because until somebody's really done their own work, it's like pointless to come together. I think there's a point in time, but in the beginning it really is just sparks so much more. So tell me this, so transformation, what do you think is the number one thing for transformation? You've worked with addicts, you've worked with families, you've worked with couples. What is that secret?
Well, I speak from personal experience. When I was a teenager, I was having a lot of difficulty. I was one of those angst-ridden teens. Can you imagine me with purple hair?
Yeah, I had shaved on the side.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
We would have been friends.
Totally.
We would have been friends. So I think really what got me through it was really identifying my thought process. I found a book, thank God, called Feeling Good. And I was like, feeling good? And I was like, yeah, it's a classic. So that really got me into cognitive behavioral therapy. So when you're talking about stories before, rewriting your story, looking at your thought process.
Oh,
What's
right.
going on in your thought process? Because that's what leads to feelings, right? Because I don't know about you, but have you ever tried to intercept on your feeling? Like, oh, just stop being sad.
Oh my God, it's
Stop
the
being
worst.
angry.
I love
It's like-
and when you wake up that way too, you're like, I was fine when I went to bed. Why do I have this feeling right now? And you try and intervene in that, it doesn't really work.
Doesn't work. So what we say is you got to intervene on the thoughts or the behaviors because they're always attached to your feelings.
How do you do that?
So how do you do that? Well, first is raising awareness, thinking about your thinking. So when I'm teaching someone, like say if I have someone who's depressed or anxious or whatever it is, I was like, well, tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about before that happened to you and you became angry or sad. And so they go, well, I was thinking about what a loser I was. I'm like, well, let's look at that.
Right.
Let's look at that thought. And then they'll realize, oh my gosh, I'm thinking that I'm a loser like 10 times a day.
It's like Byron Katie's work. Is this real? Is this the truth?
Yes.
Just like distinguishing down your thought process. So powerful.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll go through that and really it's it can be quite the process. And then your brain starts building new muscle, or I don't want to say brain builds new muscle because that sounds kind of idiotic, doesn't it? Very scientific, Laura. But you're
In a way, it does though, right? Because the more you practice it, the more reps you do, the stronger your focus gets.
It's true. I'm an athlete, so I go the muscle.
Yeah.
But the brain builds new pathways. So it's and there's a lot of evidence with that. With that kind of therapy.
So the awareness itself builds new pathways, and then is there something that is the sort of the next step beyond that?
Yes, it's kind of multifaceted. I mean, there's many different ways to combat dysfunctional thought patterns in cognitive behavioral therapy. There's there's a book that says 12 ways to untwist your thinking. So a lot of times I say, well, let's look at evidence for the fact that you're a loser. Give me the evidence. Okay, and then they're like, well, and sometimes they're hard pressed to think like, well, what backs up that I'm a loser? And so, and then I said, well, what evidence doesn't support that? And they're like, well, this, that. Like,
It's so fascinating. I love the way you put it because I've always felt in my own experience that it's kind of like being either a really good or really bad lawyer. I decide what I want to almost believe or change my thought around first, and then I seek out all the evidence to build a case for what I should or can or need to believe.
Yes.
So it's
You're
a little like that.
focusing. What are we focusing on?
Yeah.
Right. That
Yes.
day,
So
and
true.
you can focus on things that will help you or things that will hurt you. And sometimes people are used to leading a hurtful life, so they stay there.
Right.
They don't know anything different. It's the same like an addict. Well, I don't know what it's like to not drink.
Right.
I don't know a lifestyle that doesn't involve that.
So let's get into that recovery and working with addicts. What is that shift? What is that biggest shift that you've seen? Just breaking down their thought pattern, or?
Well, there's one group that does address addiction with changing thought patterns, but the larger method of recovery is the 12-step
Of course.
process. So, Alcoholics Anonymous, 12-step, and that's known as a spiritual program. And you probably, could speak to that because I know you've dealt with addicts in a spiritual way, and you too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it's-
I've been in the rooms,
there you
my
go.
own addiction when I was younger.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're very familiar with
Yeah.
it. And the places that I've worked are mostly 12-step based. And so I'll go with that. And a lot of it, it's funny because I'll hear a lot of normies or non-addicts say, I'm really jealous of these addicts in recovery. And I'm like, why? Well, they get to sit in rooms with people that they connect with
Right,
and talk about
totally.
themselves. They can call someone up at 2 a.m.
I used to get so mad.
But so
It's interesting though because people do wish they had that opportunity. The normies, the people who want to be able to have a group to really connect with and to heal with, and unless you're in those rooms, sometimes people don't feel like they have the ability to, whether it's their pride, their ego, even though they're craving that healing, they're holding themselves back from it.
Definitely.
Right, yeah.
Definitely.
It's so fascinating. It's such a great point, Jesslyn. So I would say that based on everything I've read and experienced, like the most transformative element of any coaching or counseling practice is the ability to hold a safe space of unconditional regard for the person that you're with.
Yes.
And so while so much of this has to do with thinking and psychology, I feel like a deep part of it has to do with just being able to exist in this place of thoughtless, loving awareness.
You know, it really, you speak to something very important, you know, really a foundation of therapy. I remember when I started in this, I was in New York City and I was working with mentally ill homeless men in a hospital. And there was a man who, they were giving me a goodbye party because I had to leave for the summer. And there was a man who used to be a catatonic schizophrenic, which is someone with schizophrenic who just didn't move, didn't speak, and was very, you know, still. And I remember him, and I'd been working with him for about 3 months, and I remember he shuffled up to me and he said, "Laura, thank you for caring about me." He said, "It's been a very long time." And I was like, wow, I thought I was going to change the whole housing and mental health system in New York City. And that's why I'm doing this.
Right.
You know,
Wow.
that's
Absolutely.
what, why people do this,
For sure.
you know, to care and spread that unconditional regard
So
and
inspiring.
So
kindness.
inspiring. Oh.
So,
We're running out of time, but we want to know where can they find you if they want to work with you?
well, I have a website, Laura K Therapy, and I guess maybe I should put it into the camera, laurakatherapy.com. And I also, you inspire me to start my YouTube channel finally, after I
sure.
have
You
all
gotta do it.
all of it. Yeah, I put it up the other night.
Cognitive therapy is amazing. My sister's a cognitive therapist, and incredible work. There's so many modalities and processes within it that are game changing. So thank you so much for all your work